Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Read and Reread. I am Angelia, and today I'm doing the Holmes is Where the Heart is tag. I was tagged by Kelly at Books I'm Not Reading, and the tag was created by Mark of Book Time with Elvis. I will include their versions of the tag down below. So thanks, Kelly, for tagging me. She did this tag the other day, and in the process, she detected, see what I did there, that not a lot of women had done this tag. So she tagged a whole bunch of specifically women. And so here I am to fill in the gap. And at first I was nervous because I thought, wait a minute, I haven't read any Sherlock Holmes. I'm not involved in the Holmes event that's going on this month, although it looks like fun. But never fear, the questions are very flexible and open-ended, so I can supply a variety of books into these prompts, even though the prompts themselves are inspired by different aspects of the Sherlock Holmes universe. Now I haven't read, I've seen plenty of books and movies. I like Sherlock Holmes, I just haven't read the books. Do I have a favorite Holmes? I don't know. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna divert from the people that the actors that most people are debating, and I'm gonna go with Wishbone from Hound of the Baskervilles episode of Wishbone, my favorite Sherlock Holmes. So these prompts, they kind of lend themselves towards selecting mystery or suspense books, but they don't necessarily have to. They're actually very flexible. So if this looks like fun to you, please consider doing this tag yourself if you have a channel, or you can throw in answers that you would have given in the comments below. Let's see what we have here. The first one, I'm going to pull this up a little closer. The first one is, Elementary, my dear Watson, share a classic mystery novel that you consider a must-read. All right, a classic mystery novel that I have enjoyed more than once is Wilkie Collins' The Moonstone. And I know it's a classic because it says so right here on the cover. The collection of mystery classics. I guess this was part of a set at one point, but I got it in a used bookstore. So whatever else was in the collection is lost to the ages. But this was probably the best one anyway in the collection. So Wilkie Collins is one of these authors that I claim to really like, even though most of the books I either haven't read them or I read them so long ago that I don't remember anything, and I'm chronically about to reread them. But I did reread The Moonstone maybe year before, not last year, maybe the year before. It was in Victober. I read it, but not this past year. It's a great choice for Victober or anytime you want to read a classic mystery. It's one of the earliest mystery novels with like a detective kind of vibe. There is a stolen gem. There's a beautiful moonstone that was illegally stolen. It's supposed to be in India, but now it is in Great Britain. It seems to be haunting the family that is holding on to it and passing it down, probably because it was ill-begotten. And so the Moonstone goes missing at an important birthday event when it was supposed to be passed to this particular young woman. And there are several suspects, and the book has multiple narrators. And I love books with multiple narrators. And each of the different people that they talk to, I think there's a butler, a lawyer, a journal entries, police officers, somebody who, and then my favorite one, Miss Clack, who is a sanctimonious lady who irritates everyone by going around and leaving her religious pamphlets at people's houses and offering all kinds of unsolicited opinions. There is lots of humor in this book, skewering of different Victorian societal sillinesses, and a bona fide mystery. It's hard to figure out. There's twisted turns. There's a pretty crazy resolution as to what actually happened, and it's just a good time. And I think it's a really fun book. It's pretty thick. The pace kind of, it speeds up and slows down at different points with the different narrations, but I've read it 2 or 3 times and I really enjoyed it. So this is my classic mystery recommendation. The second one is Baker Street Irregulars. Recommend a book with a group of unlikely heroes or a diverse ensemble cast. I do have a mystery for this, and you've heard me talk about this book before because I read it early last year, and it's Things in Jars by Jess Kidd. This is a mystery, and in this book we do have an interesting, an unlikely group trying to solve a mystery. It is set in Victorian England. There's a question further down about settings, and this is one of my favorite settings. I love stories set in this time and place. And we have a young woman who is a detective, and that's already an unusual thing. And Bridie Devine, flame-haired, pipe-smoking detective extraordinaire, she is hired to look for a missing child, and she soon discovers that the details that she's presented with are very incomplete. There's a lot of things about this child that she wasn't told. There's a lot of things about the circumstances of the crime that she wasn't told. And the funky ensemble comes in. The people that help her out in solving this crime include, and I quote, a 7-foot-tall housemaid, a melancholic, tattooed-covered ghost, and an avuncular apothecary. These are all people that are close to Bridie. The ghost is a boxer who is from her past that she can't remember why she knows him or why he's following her around, and he's waiting for her to remember him. The housemaid, the 7-foot-tall housemaid, used to be in a traveling circus, and the avuncular apothecary, I can't quite remember. He lives in a lighthouse or something. There's something weird about where he lives, but she calls on him for help too. And he was someone who helped her as a child. So it does get kind of mixed in what's happening. Also, it ends up intertwining with Bridie's past. And it's a really good story. It's really offbeat. The characters are engaging and strange, and I loved this book. The next one is The Game is Afoot. Name a book that had a plot twist or a revelation that completely surprised you. All right, I thought of 2 books, but I'm saving one for another prompt because it's a similar prompt, or it relates. So I'm going to save one of them, and I'm going to do my other idea, which is Fingersmith by Sarah Waters. I love Sarah Waters. She is one of my favorite authors, and this book I had the fun of rereading early last year. It was, I can't remember what reading event it was, but I read it years ago when it was newish, and then I reread it, and enough time had passed that the surprises kind of got me again. I'm like, I knew some stuff was coming, but I didn't quite remember it until it happened. Again, it takes place in Victorian England. We have a girl named Sue, an orphan girl, and she is hired, or kind of, she partners up with a guy she knows who's a swindler, a con artist, and they have a con planned at a fancy estate involving another girl near her age named Maud. And Sue is going to become a maid in this household to help this guy that's known as Gentleman in the story pull off a con, and then they're going to split some money. But a lot of stuff happens, and what is really going on and the point of view in their narration, there are lots of surprises in the plotting, surprises with the characters. Just when you think you've got a grasp on what's going on, you look and you're only a third of the way through the book, and you know a lot more must be about to unfold. And it is deliciously twisted and surprising, and it's a really great example of Sarah Waters' writing. I really love there's one book of hers I don't have called Affinity, and the rest of them, I have them, I love them, and it has been quite a while since she released a book. She is on my list of people that need to hurry up and finish whatever it is they're writing and get it out there, because I'm waiting. The next one is 221B Baker Street, a Sherlock Holmes address, even I know that. Talk about the time you visited somewhere of literary significance. Oh, okay. Well, I know I'll probably think of something when it's too late, and I'll be like, oh, why didn't I talk about that? But one that came to mind is City Lights Bookstore in San Francisco, which I think began in the 1950s. This was established by poet Lawrence Ferlinghetti, and it infamously it was a publishing place, a gathering place. Allen Ginsberg. Now, I did not get these at that store. I got these at a library book sale, but I love these little editions. But there's a whole big case of all of these classic little square poetry books at City Lights Bookstore. It's upstairs, but it's just a store that's been around forever and has a wonderful history. This is the most choppy story about a famous place. I'm sorry. Okay, let's just wrap it up. It's a famous bookstore. It has a great history as a gathering place and a publisher of mainly poetry, but it's a general bookstore. It has it's kind of literary fiction oriented. But listen to this story. Allen Ginsberg's Howl and Other Poems was originally published by City Light Books in the fall of 1956. Subsequently seized by U.S. Customs and the San Francisco police, it was the subject of a long court trial in which a series of poets and professors persuaded the court that the book was not obscene. Okay, guess what? I'll just read back through this real quick, and then that'll be one of my banned books of the month. Anyway, so City Lights Bookstore. But now I don't know if this place is in the book or just in the movie, but I've been to the Exorcist Stairs in Washington, D.C. and Georgetown. Does that count as a place of literary significance? Moriarty's Master Plan. Discuss a book where the protagonist was especially exceptionally cunning and memorable. Okay, two things popped into my mind simultaneously, and I know there are I could think of lots of more memorable villainous people, but two people popped in first, so that's who I'm going to show you. I have a classic one and a contemporary one. My classic one is Mrs. Danvers from Rebecca. She is a wicked housekeeper, and she is just delightfully, deviously Danvers awful. I did not read Rebecca until really the past, somewhere a couple, maybe last year or the year before, and it was so interesting because when I started to read it, I was aware of this famous opening line, which is, last night I dreamt I went to Manderley again. And I had heard that line a million times. I knew it was about a young wife who was the second wife of a man who has a beautiful estate. And I didn't know. That's all I knew. I thought, I don't know, is there a ghost? Or is there a question about what happened to the first wife or whatever? I didn't know about Mrs. Danvers at all. So I started reading the book, and at first I wasn't sure where we were going. It seemed it's very slow to unfold, and there's a lot of atmosphere, and not knowing what was going to happen, I kept thinking, is that all there is? And then all of a sudden it just started cooking. The story just really heated up, and part of that is due to Mrs. Danvers, and she wastes no opportunity to remind the new young unnamed wife of how things were when Rebecca was there and the way Rebecca liked to do things, and she never misses a chance to put the screws to this new wife. Really a memorable villain, and just talking about it, I want to read the book again. Now that I know what happens, I want to read it again and kind of appreciate how Daphne du Maurier lays this groundwork and builds the story. My contemporary villain that came to mind was Luke from The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Luke is, I don't know if he's the devil or just a devil, but in this book, he is a character who appears to people when they are feeling desperate and out of options and very upset and disgruntled with their lives, and he presents them with a bargain, and the bargain always has a really high cost that you might not really understand until it comes into play. And I'm being kind of vague here, but let me just tell you, the book's about a woman named Addie who begins in the 1714, and she is about to be kind of pressured into marrying someone that she is not interested in, and she would really just like some time and space to explore the world in her mind, and she likes to write and draw in her journal. And on the eve of this wedding that she doesn't want in this little village in France, Luke appears to her. And when he appears kind of like how you would want him to look and be. So he, this hot dude just suddenly appears. And the deal is she could live forever, but no one will ever remember her. Like, as soon as she can talk to people, associate them. If she goes around a corner and comes back, they've never seen her before. They don't know who she is. So she can form no lasting relationships, but she can go where she likes. She can live as long as she likes. And so she takes this deal. She not knowing how the cost of that lack of association and that loneliness might affect her later on. And the thing is, he's going to come to her once a year and see if she's ready to give up her soul to him when she has tired of this deal. And so she embarks on this, centuries long life. And this goes on for a long time until the present day in New York City, when she meets a man working in a bookstore, and when she steals something, and when she comes back in, he remembers her, and everything changes. So it's a really great story. It's a fantasy when I don't read a lot of fantasy. It's romance when I don't read romance. And Luke is a very alluring and attractive villain. I mean, I kind of wish he had a book of his own. All right, the next one is The Art of Deduction. Mention either a book that kept you guessing all the way to the end, or one where you guessed the outcome earlier on. So I'm going to talk about a book that's not really a mystery at all, Cloud Cuckoo Land by Anthony Doerr. This I did not know where we were going with this story. I love this book. This is probably my number one book that I want to reread, that I don't really have any clear plan of when I'm going to do it. Maybe it'll be my Remember December, and it's a long one, so it might be the whole Remember December. But this is one of those books where the second I closed it, I wanted to start over, but I did not, and it's been a couple of years. So let me just read this little blurb here. Set in Constantinople in the 15th century, and of course I did not remember that when I was talking about Istanbul last week in Turkey. Set in Constantinople in the 15th century, in a small town in present-day Idaho, and on an interstellar ship decades from now, blah, 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 a soaring story about children on the cusp of adulthood and worlds in peril who find resilience, hope, and a book. Now, yes, there is a book or a story that binds all these plots and characters together, and the book circles around and around through the different main characters. Somehow the characters are well developed despite being several of them, and rotating the narration and the point of view. The plot is intricate and wonderful. The themes are just really good, and there's more than one surprise, because it's one of those books when you finally see how everything fits together. There's lots of surprises, but there's one in particular that really I did not see coming at all. Maybe other readers did, but something in there, I don't even want to indicate what part of the story or who or when this thing hits, but something is in here that just changed everything of I need to read it again. So Cloud Cuckoo Land, Anthony Doerr. When I got this book, it sat around for a while because I had big book trepidation, but I loved it so much. And I mean, it's kind of dangerous here in my hands. Like, I'm just going to throw aside everything else I'm supposed to be reading and just start reading this one again. The next prompt is The Hound of the Baskervilles. Talk about a book with a strong atmospheric setting, or one where the setting plays a significant role in the story. Oh, there's so many books like that. Even just recently, a lot of us have been talking about North Woods, where the setting that kind of is the story. The role of place in a story can just add so much to it. So I did think about settings. I thought about how I talked about Victorian London. I love city settings too. Books that take place in New York City. But I decided instead to go small and talk about a book that I read in 2022, The Sleeping Car Porter by Suzette Mayer. This book won the Giller Prize last year, and it is by a Canadian author. And this book takes place on a train. And there are a number of significant books that take place on a train and really rely on the setting of that enclosed space, like Murder on the Orient Express. And then I'm thinking of, I didn't read Snowpiercer, but I saw the movie, and I just train that kind of closed in things on trains and airplanes and buses, you know. But this one is just so excellent. So this takes place on a train in 1929, and our main character is Baxter, who is a porter on the train. And there's a racist custom of calling the porters George, no matter what their name actually is. The white passengers just calling them all collectively George, like they're saying, you know, hey, mister. And so he has to put up with that. He has to put up with a lot of things because he is saving up money to go to dental school. And he's got dental and anatomy manuals. He also is an avid reader of science fiction stories, and this is in the time of those magazines like Weird Tales. And so he's just got this very vivid life of the mind, but this very menial, repetitive, mind-numbing job. And there is so much suspense in this story, even though they're just in this train, because every mistakes that he makes, or even mistakes that are not his fault, the porters receive deductions, and if you get too many, you get fired and you're not paid and you're out of luck. And so it doesn't matter. I mean, his own mistakes count, and then other things like just irrational complaints from the train guests. Somebody spills stuff and it stains the linens, and the stain won't come out. Well, that's, you know, he gets dinged for that. So there's the suspense of trying to navigate and keep all of these entitled white passengers calm and happy and not causing any ruckus. And it is exacerbated by the fact that there is a stoppage on the line and they all get stuck. And then we also have the fact that he is sleep deprived because his job is basically 24 hours a day. And so he gets to the point where he is hallucinating because he's so sleep deprived and still trying to carry out his duties. And if all those things weren't enough to heighten the tension, there's the postcard that he found in the bathroom, an erotic postcard of two men. And I forgot to mention that Baxter is gay and he's in the closet. And we find out about his life of fleeting encounters and then his one love affair that got away. And so he has this postcard and he puts it in his pocket. And so there's this horrible tension about that postcard. He keeps thinking, oh, I should probably get rid of this, but he doesn't. And we all know that if you have a picture that not everybody should see, something's probably going to happen. So all of these things just create this bubbling cauldron of atmosphere and suspense. The time period, the place, the claustrophobia, the dreamlike quality of the sleep deprivation, and it is just really good. The Reichenbach Falls. Talk about a series that you thought had ended but made a surprise comeback. I don't know. I can't really think of one that I thought was over, except maybe the Jackson Brodie books that I'm rereading now, because Kate Atkinson never really tells us if it's over. So the last one came out in 2019, and then there's a new one coming out later this year. So that's 4 years. And then before the 2019 one, there was a big gap of 2011. So really, I guess when this one came out, that was the surprise, because after 2011 and then 8 years went by, I didn't know she was going to write anymore. And then she did this one. But now there's another one coming out. So she never really says for sure if she's finished with Jackson Brody, and then she's not. So I guess that qualifies. Sherlockian adaptations. Discuss your favorite book-to-screen adaptation or a retelling of a classic story. As far as a retelling, I talked last week about Julia. The retelling of 1984 by Sandra Newman was excellent. That might be a case of recency syndrome, but it really was very good. And as far as adaptations, I am chronically cranky about adaptations, but I did watch the movie of Brooklyn the other night. I read Brooklyn by Colm Toiveen over the past year, and I finally did watch the movie with Saoirse Ronan. Oh, there's who else? Jim Broadbent is in it. Anyway, it was really good. It was very faithful to the story. They left out some things that didn't change it too much, and they did change the tone. They changed a little bit about the ending. In fact, after I got to the end of the movie, I had to pull out the book and reread the ending so I could kind of look at the comparison, because it wasn't like a completely different ending. There was just kind of like some adjustments that were made that left you with a different feeling. And it made me think about the experience of watching that movie if you hadn't read the book. But I do think it was a good adaptation. I thought I really did love that movie. So surprise, surprise. I liked a movie made out of a book. Okay, I think this is the last question. The Great Detective. Recommend a book with a brilliant and memorable protagonist. All right, this isn't really a mystery, but when I thought of brilliant protagonist, I thought of the main character of Washington Black by Essie Ajugian. This made it to the Booker Prize shortlist. I have to check and see what actually won in that year, but this was so good. I don't think she's released another novel since this one, and this is actually the only one I've read by her. So if you've read another book by this author that you recommend, please tell me in the comments. This book was published in 2018. I hope she is working on another book. I will read to you the blurb because it's reasonably accurate. When two English brothers arrive at a Barbados sugar plantation, they bring with them a darkness beyond what the slaves have already known. Washington Black, an 11-year-old field slave, is terrified to be chosen as manservant to one of these men. To his surprise, the eccentric Christopher Wilde turns out to be a naturalist, an explorer, an inventor, and an abolitionist. Soon, Washington is initiated into a world where a flying machine can carry a man across the sky, where the night sea is set alight with fields of jellyfish, and even a boy born in chains may embrace a life of dignity and meaning, and where two people, separated by an impossible divide, can begin to see each other as human. All right, so it does begin where Washington is noted for his intellect, and he begins to learn how to be the assistant to this naturalist. The other brother is just a horrible, horrible person, and something occurs where the scientist and Washington Black have to go on the run. And there's lots of changes of setting. Washington grows up, but he's memorable, he is brilliant, he's talented, he's an artist, but there's always danger and treachery through this time period as he's navigating through North America and later England as a young Black man. So again, one of these ones that I really want to get back to and read again, but so many books, so little time. But Washington Black, very memorable protagonist. I'm going to continue the trend of tagging some additional women that aren't, I got to check. I thought of Melinda because she reads mysteries a lot, but she's already tagged. So I'm going to put Marilyn of Marilyn Maya Mendoza. She does read suspense and mystery books. And I'm also going to put Priscilla of Evening Reader because she's usually up for doing fun tags. Consider yourself tagged if you want to give this one a try, and anybody else who thinks it sounds like fun. And you can also throw in your 2 cents as usual. I appreciate all of your comments, and I look forward to hearing what you have to say. We'll be back on Friday for Friday Reads. See you then and have a great week.